She stood in the courtroom wearing an orange jumpsuit, her perfectly styled ponytail and flawless makeup replaced by the harsh reality of fluorescent lighting and handcuffs. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, she looked up with tears in her eyes and whispered, "I was defending myself. He was obsessed with me." But the prosecutor had receipts, $10,000 worth of receipts, messages that showed she hadn't been running from her biggest subscriber. She'd been luring him to his death. And the jury had just found her guilty of first-degree murder. This is the story of how an OnlyFans creator turned a parasocial relationship into a deadly trap, and how the digital trail she left behind destroyed every lie she told. Before we dive into this case, hit that subscribe button. We cover the most shocking true crime stories every week, cases that blur the line between victim and predator. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you think you know about online relationships and self-defense. This is the story of Natalie Brooks, 25 years old, living in Miami, and running one of the most successful OnlyFans accounts in her niche. With over 50,000 subscribers and monthly earnings that topped six figures, Natalie had built an empire on the platform. She posted daily content, responded to messages, and created the illusion of intimacy that kept her subscribers coming back month after month. To the outside world, Natalie was living the dream. Designer clothes, luxury apartment overlooking the ocean, expensive dinners at the hottest restaurants. Her Instagram showed a life of glamour and freedom, carefully curated to project success and confidence. But behind the filtered photos and strategic captions, Natalie was drowning in debt, credit cards maxed out, rent 3 months behind, car payment overdue. The lifestyle she projected cost far more than she was actually making, and the gap was widening every month. Then she met Marcus Chen, or rather, Marcus found her. He subscribed to her OnlyFans in January, and within a week, he was her top spender. Custom content requests, private messages at premium prices, tips that ran into the hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars. By March, Marcus had spent over $10,000 on Natalie's content. He wasn't just a subscriber. He was funding her entire lifestyle. Marcus was 32, worked in tech, and lived alone in a condo 15 miles from Natalie's apartment. He'd discovered OnlyFans during the pandemic and had become increasingly invested in the parasocial relationships the platform enabled. To Marcus, Natalie wasn't just content. She was someone who understood him, who valued his support, who made him feel special. The messages she sent him felt personal. The custom content felt intimate. And when she suggested they meet in person, he thought it was the beginning of something real. But Natalie saw Marcus differently. She saw an ATM that was starting to run dry. His spending had dropped in recent weeks. His messages had become more possessive, more demanding. He wanted more of her time, more attention, more of the girlfriend experience he felt he'd paid for. And Natalie was tired of performing, tired of pretending, tired of the exhausting emotional labor of making lonely men feel loved. So she made a decision. If Marcus wasn't going to keep paying, she'd find another way to profit from their relationship. His life insurance, if he had one, his wallet, his apartment. Something. She didn't go into the meeting planning murder exactly, but she went prepared for it, and when the opportunity presented itself, she didn't hesitate. Marcus had been asking to meet Natalie in person for months. Every time, she deflected with excuses that sounded reasonable, but were designed to keep the boundary firmly in place. Meeting subscribers in real life was dangerous. It could shatter the fantasy. It could lead to stalking. But in late April, Natalie changed her approach. She sent Marcus a message that made his heart race. She wanted to meet him. She valued their connection. She thought there might be something real between them. They agreed to meet at his condo on a Friday night. Neutral territory for her, safe space for him. Marcus spent the entire day preparing. He cleaned his apartment obsessively. He bought expensive wine and cooked dinner from scratch. He wanted everything to be perfect for the woman he'd been supporting for months, the woman he believed cared about him. Natalie arrived at 7 p.m., dressed casually in jeans and a leather jacket, her blonde hair pulled back in the same ponytail her subscribers loved. She smiled when Marcus opened the door, hugged him, told him how nice his place was. For the first hour, everything seemed normal. They ate dinner, they drank wine. Marcus talked nervously about his work, his hobbies, his life. Natalie listened with the practiced attention she'd perfected over thousands of messages. But as the evening progressed, Marcus became more comfortable, more forward. He reached for her hand. He leaned in for a kiss. He suggested they move to the bedroom. Natalie pulled back. Said she wasn't ready. Said she wanted to take things slow. Marcus's expression changed. The hopeful, nervous energy turned to frustration. He'd spent $10,000. He'd been patient. He'd done everything right. And now she was rejecting him? The argument escalated quickly. Marcus raised his voice, told her she'd let him on, told her she owed him after everything he'd given her. Natalie stood up to leave. And that's when Marcus made his fatal mistake. He grabbed her arm, not hard, not violently, just enough to stop her from walking out, just enough to give Natalie the opening she'd been waiting for. She picked up the wine bottle from the table, heavy glass, half full, and she swung it at Marcus's head with every ounce of strength she had. He went down immediately, blood pooling on the hardwood floor. He wasn't dead, not yet. He was groaning, trying to get up, and Natalie stood over him, weighing her options. She could call an ambulance, she could leave, or she could finish what she'd started. She chose option 3. She hit him again, and again, until he stopped moving, until the apartment was silent except for the sound of her own breathing. Then she calmly wiped down the wine bottle, placed it back on the table, and staged the scene to look like self-defense. She messed up her hair, tore her jacket, scratched her own arms, and then she called 911, crying hysterically about the man who'd attacked her. The police arrived at Marcus Chen's condo within minutes of Natalie's 911 call. They found her sitting on the front steps, visibly shaken, makeup smeared from crying. She told them a story that sounded entirely plausible. She'd met Marcus online. They were supposed to have dinner. He'd attacked her when she tried to leave. She'd defended herself with the only weapon available. It was self-defense. She was the victim. The officers took her statement, photographed her injuries, and began processing the scene. At first glance, everything supported her story. Marcus's body showed signs of a violent struggle. The wine bottle had his blood on it. Natalie had scratches on her arms and a bruise forming on her cheek. But as the lead detective, Sarah Morgan, walked through the apartment, small details began to stand out. Details that didn't quite fit the narrative of a woman fighting for her life. The dinner table was still set. 2 plates of food, barely touched. 2 wine glasses, both half empty. If Marcus had attacked Natalie suddenly, violently, why was everything so orderly? Where were the signs of an initial struggle? And most tellingly, Marcus's phone was on the kitchen counter, unlocked, with his messages to Natalie still open on the screen. The last message he'd sent, just an hour before his death, read, "Can't wait to finally meet you in person. This means everything to me." Detective Morgan requested Natalie's phone. Natalie hesitated, then agreed, confident that her carefully curated messages would support her story. But what the detective found on that phone destroyed Natalie's entire defense. The OnlyFans account, the $10,000 in transactions. The hundreds of messages where Natalie had encouraged Marcus's feelings, had promised him a relationship, had led him to believe they had something real. And most damning of all, a message Natalie had sent to a friend just 3 days before the murder. "This subscriber won't stop bothering me. I need to figure out how to get him to leave me alone permanently." The investigation expanded rapidly. Detectives interviewed Natalie's friends, who described her as calculating and financially desperate. They pulled her bank records, which showed she was drowning in debt despite her apparent success. They analyzed the crime scene more thoroughly and found that the blood spatter patterns didn't match Natalie's story. Marcus had been hit from behind first, then while he was down. This wasn't self-defense. This was an execution. Within 48 hours, Natalie Brooks was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The self-defense claim evaporated under the weight of evidence. The Crying Victim Act stopped working the moment detectives showed her the receipts, literally, the financial transactions, the manipulative messages, the calculated planning. Natalie had thought she could turn a parasocial relationship into a perfect murder, but she'd forgotten that everything online leaves a trail, and that trail led straight to a jail cell. Natalie Brooks's trial began 8 months after Marcus Chen's death. The courtroom was packed with media, true crime enthusiasts, and people from both sides of a deeply polarized debate. Was Natalie a predatory killer who'd exploited a lonely man, or was she a sex worker defending herself from a client who'd crossed boundaries? The jury would have to decide. The prosecution's case was devastating in its simplicity. They presented the financial records showing Marcus had spent over $10,000 on Natalie's content. They showed the messages where she'd encouraged his feelings and promised him a relationship. They brought in a forensic expert who testified that the blood spatter patterns proved Marcus had been attacked from behind, not in a face-to-face struggle. and they played Natalie's 911 call, pointing out the moments where her crying sounded performative, rehearsed, fake. But the most damaging evidence came from Natalie's own digital footprint. Text messages to friends where she called Marcus pathetic and obsessed. A voice memo she'd recorded just hours before the murder, practicing what she would say to police if things went wrong. And a search history on her laptop that included how to claim self-defense, life insurance beneficiary laws, and how long does it take someone to die from head trauma. The defense tried to paint Marcus as a stalker, a man who'd become dangerously obsessed with a woman he'd never met. They argued that sex workers have the right to defend themselves, that the power dynamic between client and creator made Natalie inherently vulnerable. They brought in an expert on parasocial relationships who testified about the psychological harm these interactions can cause. But every argument they made was undermined by one simple fact. Natalie had invited Marcus to his own apartment. She had gone there willingly, and she had brought nothing that suggested she feared for her safety. Marcus's family provided victim impact statements that left the courtroom in tears. His mother spoke of a kind, lonely man who'd struggled to connect with people in real life and had turned to the internet for companionship. His sister described the Marcus she knew: generous, gentle, incapable of violence. They didn't deny that his relationship with Natalie had been unhealthy, but they insisted he hadn't deserved to die for it. When Natalie took the stand in her own defense, she stuck to her story. Marcus had attacked her. She'd feared for her life. Everything she'd done was to survive. But under cross-examination, her story fell apart. The prosecutor walked her through every message, every transaction, every lie. And when asked directly, "Did you go to Marcus Chen's apartment planning to kill him?" Natalie hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous: guilty of first-degree murder. As the forewoman read the decision, Natalie's carefully maintained composure finally shattered. The confident influencer became a sobbing woman in an orange jumpsuit, the reality of her situation crushing down on her all at once. At sentencing, the judge looked at Natalie with something close to pity. "You took advantage of a lonely man's feelings," he said. "You manipulated him, you lured him, and you killed him in cold blood. The fact that your relationship began on a digital platform doesn't make his life worth any less." Life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. As Natalie was led out of the courtroom, reporters noted that she looked nothing like the glamorous creator from her Instagram. The makeup was gone, the styled hair was gone, the confident smile was gone. All that remained was a convicted murderer who discovered that the real world has consequences that no amount of filters can hide. Natalie Brooks is currently serving her sentence in a Florida women's prison. Her OnlyFans account was deleted. Her social media went dark. The luxury lifestyle she'd projected to the world vanished the moment the handcuffs clicked shut. Marcus Chen's family established a foundation in his name to raise awareness about the dangers of parasocial relationships and online exploitation. They don't blame OnlyFans or the platform. They blame the person who saw their son not as a human being, but as a resource to be drained and then discarded. The case sparked national debate about sex work, online relationships, and where the line is between client and stalker. But for Marcus's family, the debate misses the point. Their son is gone, and no amount of discussion will bring him back. If this case shocked you, hit that like button and subscribe to Lethal Tales. We cover the stories that everyone's talking about, but no one wants to admit they're watching. Drop a comment with your thoughts on this case, and let me know what story you want to see next. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.